Thank you so much, Terry, and thank you, everyone. What a joy to see you all. I'm going to do what Terry did as well so that I can also see the gallery view while I'm speaking, because it's just wonderful to feel connected, to feel that we're part of this river together, and also I guess the theme of a little bit what I want to share this evening is the joy of Sangha building and the joy of coming together in community, and the sense also that to be able to create together a practice center, to be able to create a sanctuary, a refuge, and a home for our community in the UK. Something in it feels to me like a forest that has got to a level of kind of maturity and rooting that it can kind of bear fruit, you know. And it's not to say that the tree or the forest hasn't been very busy over the last few decades, getting lots of nutriments, strengthening the branches, reaching out and kind of evolving. But how incredible it is when these sort of species of plant that, and you're all probably far more horticultural than I am, but you know, the species of plant that can fruit rarely and richly after many decades. It feels like that's the point of fruition that the UK Sangha is coming to. And I just want to sort of name that and acknowledge that, and especially in these exciting days as we come towards the potential, I don't know, bursting open of the fruit, I guess you could call it. And so the joy of that, and also the sort of transitional nature of that, like, so there's a new fruiting of the manifestation of the community. And the reason I say that is because as someone who like lives in a practice center and nurtures a practice center and a community that has this sense of place, it is such a wonderful, like, it just opens so much possibility to be able to create a sanctuary of being together physically in person, a sense of place where all of our mind's eye, we can feel, that's where our heart goes when we think of where can I go to lay my head, like where can I go to shed a tear, where can I go to touch like the sacred part of our practice, and to have that sense that we will be putting down those roots together is, yeah, I think it will be such a shift in a real sense of solidifying, rooting, and kind of deepening our Sangha together. And then for those of us that have that aspiration, not only for like our own healing and refuge, but to be able to share sanctuary with others, as we do already in all of our local sanghas. Wow, to be able to nurture that place where we will plant trees together, where we will plant flowers together and take care of the garden, where we will take care of a sense of home, so that all of those people who may find like the intellectual part of the practice a bit harder of a reach, there will be something they can literally physically step into like all year round, where all of that energy of our collective practice will be kind of held, contained, nurtured, and rooted. And this is we're like on a very exciting kind of precipice of that as a community, on the cusp of that. Maybe cusp is a better word than precipice. On the cusp of that as a community. And I remember with Thai here in the monastic community, when we were about to have ordinations, Thai described it as kind of being pregnant, like the community was pregnant with possibility, and that brought a lot of anticipation and excitement, and that sort of life force and vitality coming through. So I feel that's the moment we're in as a community. There is life force, there is vitality, there is the creation of something that will be new and different and evolving, and it will have such a strong sense of place. And I'm one of the lucky ones that's had a chance to visit Abenhall, and I think the videos and all of these the drone footage and stuff gives a really great sense of it. Someone was asking me a couple of days ago about whether I thought it was a good spot. And I said, it's the most magical spot. And I don't know how many of you have gone onto your Google Maps and you've done all your little triangulations. What's so incredible about it is it's on the edge of the Forest of Dean. So you have old growth forest, you know, this beautiful ancient kind of where, how do you say, the land is happy, the land is singing. And it's near, as I'm sure most of you know, this spring called St. Anthony's Well. So this like a sort of ancient spring source. And well, I guess being a bit of a monastic history geek, I wanted to really understand how good the spiritual energy might be in that place. So it is just a couple of miles from where the big monastery was in that part of the country, way back when, I think it was in the 12th century, that they had a monastery there. And it was the monastery that was given, like, you know, how they say it, what is it? The tithes of the Forest of Dean. So that's like literally the spot where the monastery was. And so the name Aben Hall literally means from abbey, so from like having had a monastery there before. Some of us, I quite understand, might be quite allergic to all of the kind of prehistory Christian aspect of this. But I think in terms of the spiritual energy, in terms of the investment in the land, we know this is land that has sung a spiritual song before, and we will be kind of coming back to sing that song together in a new way, in, we can say, a more inclusive way, with all the openness of Buddhism, all the openness of all of our practices, and creating a new kind of spirituality in this corner of the UK. And I feel that the land will be helping us in that endeavor. We will have the support of the land ancestors to create a sanctuary in this spot. And so that makes me sort of triply excited as a practitioner and as someone like all of us who takes so much of my own energy and I guess my own spirituality from the land itself. And so this is a really fertile spot for our forest to be fruiting, to continue all these beautiful nature metaphors. And also at this kind of juncture in all of these endeavors, what's really incredible, and I've had the opportunity over the last kind of 2 decades to be a part of so many incredible Sangha projects in the Plum Village community. And what I love about the creation of projects is we sort of harvest the aspirations, the ideals, and the dreams of everybody. And then we kind of come together and we say, let us make our dream a reality. And an incredible thing I've also learned is that we harvest the power of the dreaming, but then also we balance it with this kind of pragmatism. And we often used to see this a lot for those who have met Sister Chan Kong and Thai. Sister Chan Kong, ever the pragmatist, really the woman of action. Thank you, Ho Ting, for celebrating International Women's Day. So here, just to speak a little about the pragmatism of Sister Chan Kong and really wanting to understand how things are going to work and are there enough toilets and where will people park their cars and, you know, actually, they were mostly the main things she was worried about. You can cook in a tent, you can eat on your lap. Like for a lot of things, you sort of don't need so much. But she's always very keen on having enough toilets, which there will be in the site. And then the dreaming and the kind of vision and that clarity. And I think in all the projects that I've been involved in, there's a dynamic balance between the dreaming and the idealism and then the kind of reality of it. And what can happen in the dreaming part is we want everything to be perfect. You know, we want all our, and we sort of transfer our ideals and our spiritual needs, like our spiritual craving, to this project needs to meet all of those needs. And that is wonderful in the dreaming sense. And I think then there's also a part of our practice which is aiming high and accepting where we are. And this was a lesson I learned from Thai over and over and over again. He'd have a big ambition, we'd meet it about this much, and he'd be super happy with us. And then I would be really shocked, like, what do you mean you're happy? You're happy with us having done what felt like a tiny part of what he had wanted. But he had this practice of dreaming big, really cultivating that volition, aspiration, and ideals, and accepting imperfection. And some of you might have heard some of the talks where he sort of says over and over again, an imperfect Sangha is good enough. An imperfect Sangha is good enough. And what some of us are starting to realize is, because an imperfect Sangha is good enough, that's why we can also be a part of the Sangha, because we're so acutely aware of our own imperfections and our own limits in our practice, our own habit energies, our own compost that is still there to be transformed. And because the Sangha is imperfect, that's why we can be imperfect. And then that's why we can all be together. And that's why we can grow something together. We don't demand of each other to be perfect. And I think the reason why this becomes important is that sometimes when we feel such a moment of like great potential and great manifesting and being on the cusp of something, just like in politics or in the world, right? You then want your perfect candidate or the perfect policy manifesto or the perfect outcome from things. But actually, an imperfect Sangha is good enough. And one thing that I have come to understand with this as well is that an imperfect Sangha is good enough because also our imperfections are impermanent. So the things that I feel, are imperfect in myself are changing all the time. But also the Sangha's weaknesses and strengths are changing all the time. And by being in the Sangha, by being together, and by aspiring always to something better, to transform ourselves, our habit energies together, the Sangha itself can evolve. And so in the Plum Village tradition, we don't see the Sangha as something kind of fixed, something cast in stone, something in a box. The Sangha is this always evolving river. It's an always evolving, we could say, ecosystem. And so then what I've come to understand also is that, say we might have some wishes for the Sangha, that we might have greater diversity of voices or presence or leadership, or that we might have greater subtlety of how we celebrate that diversity, or maybe different ways of working, or more skillful ways of mobilizing one another, or we can always have these great dreams. And I think all of us are in this constant dynamic state of wanting to get closer to that. But to ourselves recognize that, like, our presence, we can literally be that change in the community. So it's like, what can I do? So instead of, sometimes, and we also have this a lot in Plum Village, and I don't know how much this might or might not have happened in this project, but, we can immediately, like the critical perfectionist mind, we start saying, why aren't they, or why isn't there, or why can't there be? And so we have a lot of kind of why questions. And so just in case any of us might be holding any why questions, even about the location or about, I don't know, anything that you might be seeing or reading or thinking, whenever there are the why questions, we can also replace them with a sort of, what can I do? So, because I think sometimes in the why questions, we may delegate and think that it's other people creating this practice center. But actually, it's all 178 of us on this call, and the however many thousand on the mailing list, and how many thousand who are offering the donations, that actually we're creating the practice center together. And so if we would like it to be different, the question for ourselves is then, how can I make it? How can I make sure there is these kind of sessions happening in this practice center? Or how can I make sure there is, I don't know enough to know what we would all like to see in this center, but how can I make sure there's enough scholarships? How can I make sure there is a wonderful vegetable garden and volunteering opportunities? How can I make sure there is ethnic diversity? And how can I make sure that every part of the UK feels included? So then it's on us to see and to bring and to offer that. And that's then where this practice of together generating something comes to life. Because basically, exactly inside whatever we might feel is a shortcoming is the seed of our own volition to do something about that. And so each one of us, so whenever we might feel, I wish they were doing X, Y, Z, It's like, well then, okay, there's your mission. Help offer XYZ to the project. And this is exactly how we operate in Plum Village. And so Plum Village is made literally of the people who are present, who are engaging, who are offering our energy. And that's how the evolving happens. And we evolve towards what is most important to all of us who kind of show up. And as some of us know from the teachings on the 6 harmonies, which I'm sure have been explored quite a lot in all of the different calls that you've been having, there's this sense of physical presence. And that's going to be the real power of this center, which is by showing up physically together, the depth of Sanghahood that we'll be building, but also the depth of possibility, because we'll show up and be able to manifest in this Sangha whatever is that wish for us to manifest. And I've seen it in Plum Village. I've now been living here for more than 17 years. The Sangha is so different from when I came in, and yet it's, I have a chance to realize more of my dreams like than ever before. And so I've just realized by sticking around and by putting in our energy, we can create many things that we would like to see. And that is the power of Sangha building, the power of kind of doing it together, showing up and creating together. And there's one final thing that I would like to share, which is this incredible, so obviously to become a monastic is quite an extreme act of Sangha building, because there are many things that we let go of in order to come into the monastery. We let go of our being close to our family, we let go of our friends, we let go of all of our normal things that we might do to make us happy, like going out or things like that, in order to really show up and be of service to something bigger than ourselves. And for all of us that have been putting our time, our energy, and our material resources to create this practice center, we're already experiencing this joy of being part of something bigger than ourselves. And I just want to really, underline the sacredness of that kind of contribution, that in our society today, things are going so much more in the direction of, individual security, national security, us first, me first, and a much more individualistic direction. And what we're all experimenting is what would it be for me to give to something bigger than myself? And in the East, and for many of our practitioners who have Eastern roots, there's quite a clear sense of like so in Eastern terms, we use the language of like merit. So the merit of generosity of time, energy, and material resources to something bigger than ourselves is a kind of spiritual investment, it brings great benefit that is somehow immeasurable. That act of saying, I give to something like without measure. And this is kind of also linked to like any kind of transactional energy that sometimes can come in for all of us into our acts of generosity, because we're so used to living in a society where it's like this fiscally or economically reciprocal. But in the deep ancient understanding of merit, the act of offering unconditionally already gives us so much like lightness and joy in our heart. And for some of us who are, as many of us will be, in service professions or have been carers for others, like I belong to that group of us where it's really hard to have the boundaries to the offering. Like there's this sort of endless offering, and yet we have a lot of joy from the unconditional giving. But maybe we may struggle to set the boundaries and take care of ourselves. And so sometimes I found myself saying, am I sure, or is this something I can really invest? So in my terms, I already gave up all my money before I came in, what little I had. But for me, it was like having given up everything, then it's like my commitment, my time, my energy, my effort. Can I keep giving it? Should I keep giving it? Is this still aligned with me? And at some point, I had this, yeah, maybe I wouldn't say a moment of doubt, but a moment of questioning like, can I trust this Sangha? Can I have faith in this Sangha? And I had a very powerful moment where I felt the energy of Thai there with me. And he was basically just saying, get out of the way. Like you and your sense of questioning, is this right? Do I trust it? Am I sure? Should I be giving so much? Am I just being a fool? It's like if you get out of the way, Taya was used to call us child. So you get out of the way, my child, and let the Dharma and the Sangha happen through you. And I have to say, I think it really marked a huge shift in my service and my own practice of generosity to the Sangha, because I realized it's not about me, but it's about letting energy happen through me, which then becomes like transcendent of many generations. And so a lot of the Sangha service, and in our case, the creation of a practice center for everyone, if we get out of the way and let the energy happen through us, like so much possibility can evolve from that. And there's a kind of paradox in this, because, you know, of course, you have to have the idea of self in order to let go of the idea of self, or you have to have a dream that you're wanting to realize. But something about asking ourselves, and this is maybe a koan for each of us, in whatever's our area of service, but in particular our service and practice of generosity in relation to the Being Peace Center, like, is there any way that I can step to the side and let energy flow through me? Like, is there anything I can do to help make this as universal and transcendent as I can? And that can allow the practice of generosity to flow freely and in a really unconditional way. And that's been my own experience. That is all I wanted to share. I appreciate that it was quite a few different points, and I'm sorry, Terry, if I've gone slightly over time, because I know you have a full program this afternoon. But I wanted to share a little bit about, our monastic approach to this kind of practice of creating a community together. Yeah, thank you.